Hey, 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 everybody. Morning on the West Coast. Michelle is here on this Monday, July the 28th, 2025. I hope everybody's doing fantastic, magnificent, and marvelous out there because I am. I am doing fantastic, magnificently, and marvelous. I had decided to not do any more videos in this format and focus on other things. And I still am focusing on other things, but I felt it was necessary to go ahead and document some things. And that's the whole purpose of my videos, this documentation. Okay, documentation to support what I'm saying versus what other people are saying, just to give some ownership of content. Okay, that's fair. I think that's fair to have ownership of your content and to not just go out into the world and because I've said this from the beginning. For me, it's not about followers and it's not about views because that's irrelevant. Okay, and I've said this a long time ago that there are tools out there whereas people can watch your page, view your page, but you have no idea they are. Okay, think about all the celebrities out there. Think about all the other influencers out there, particular ones. Think about the government. Okay, think about law enforcement. Okay, listen to me carefully here. Okay, those type of entities can view your content, and you have no idea that they are viewing your content. But that's not necessarily what I want to come on here and talk about because if anyone's not thinking clearly and effectively, then it's not going to matter anyway. You know what I mean? And as I also said in the beginning, my videos have a resonance, meaning it's going to resonate with some and it's not going to resonate with others. That's just the signs of the times. Okay, that's just how it is. It's all based on sounds and tones, melody, and the structure of how you can impulse someone. And what I mean by impulse, it means it's like again resonate. Whereas people can that you're kind of flowing around in like-mindedness per se, or with the type of people that may grab on to what you're talking about. So and I'm working on some projects, and the reason why I thought it would be necessary to come on and talk right now is I'm discovering a lot of things, and that's what life is about. It's about discovery, exploration, and kind of figuring out, okay, what is really going on? What's really going on? And unfortunately, for a lot of us out there, we are saturated with content. I know that for a fact. I mean, I'm saturated with it. I know others are. I can discern properly, but it takes a lot of effort to be properly thinking, and properly thinking for yourself. That requires work. Okay, there's nothing easy about thinking. Okay, so if you hear people talking and rambling about such, then just know that there is nothing easy about thinking. Okay, thus, I mean, why would it be easy? But it could have been easy if we had followed certain steps in our development. If we had been properly taught how to think, it could have been easy, for a lot of people. But for a lot of people, the damage has been done. And I'm saying the damage has been done to your consciousness, your psyche, your whatever you want to call it, your brain, your mind. Whereas you have lost the capacity to properly think. And the most important thing is to properly think for yourself. I'm a little sleepy eyed. I just woke up and drinking me some coffee, of course, and I was about to start my day, but I thought it was important that I document some things that I am picking up. And like I said, the damage has been done, unfortunately. So it's so in other words, something that should have been easy, it's going to be the most difficult thing to do, equivalent to breathing, what I'm about to talk about. And I know a lot of people, like I said, have a lot going on. Everybody's talking. Okay. Everybody is on podcasts. Everybody's, there's a lot of just a whole lot of moving parts. Okay. But it's almost like these driverless vehicles. That's the metaphor. We are like driverless vehicles. And at some point, it's all going to combust. It's all going to crash. It's all going, it's going to be a devastation and a collapse, a destruction, catastrophe, whatever you want to call it, unlike anything we've ever seen in our history, and especially our historical history. So here we are, facing each other. And again, like I said, I had decided, okay, because I know what I'm doing per se. I really do know what I'm doing. And each time I sit back and reflect, I say, okay, all right, yeah. Even though sometimes when you're doing things, it's like planting a seed. These metaphors matter. You need metaphors in your life. You need parables. You need to, in other words, you need to be able to think along those factors. I said this a long time ago. I have plenty of videos out there. Your theories and opinions. Okay, well, rather than having theories and opinions, let's focus more on how logical, rational, and reasonable your thoughts and opinions are. Your theories and opinions are. Let's certify it as actual rather than theories. Make it certified, other than saying that it's an opinion. You understand? So you have to continually raise your level of development, your level of thinking. And so I discovered some things, as I am working on some projects. And I'm listening to people, I'm paying attention to people. That's part of the discernment process. Listen to what people are saying, pay attention to, the modalities of how they are attempting to communicate with you, and make sure, does it add up? Is the mathing? We're great at coming up with terms and trends in our speaking. People every day are attempting to, change the language of how we communicate with each other. Some are doing it to help, but some are just doing it to trend. It's about trending, getting these views, getting these likes, getting these followers. And I've told you that so many videos ago, that you're setting yourself up. That's a trap, and you are feeding into this catastrophe, disaster. You're feeding into that it's not a path. You're feeding into that frenzy of wanting to be seen and heard. And so a lot of people, see these opportunities that we have via the social media platforms as a way of being seen and heard, which is, but we all know that it's at a point of extremism. We're really extreme about it. Enough is not enough. Enough is not enough. You cannot. People are not satisfied with 1 million followers. If they got 1 million followers, okay, they need to have 2 million followers. And if they get 2 million, they need 3 million. It's insatiable, and it doesn't stop, and it won't stop. It's more toxic and more addictive than any substance out there. There's need to be the experts of the social media platform. I remember someone said something to me some time ago, as I was attempting to sound the alarm, because that's what I do. I was sounding the alarm. Like, wait a minute, what? How are you discerning things? And it was, and I realized now. I realized a while ago. I realized what was happening on some of these major social media platforms. They were intentionally indoctrinating us. And a lot of us fell for it. A lot of us came on board. And I told you, because of that need to be seen and to be heard, to be projected as the expert, the know-it-all, you got yourself trapped up in that. A lot of people are just swirling in that cycle of intentional indoctrination via, the social media platforms. The social media platforms got a hold of certain techniques and tactics and so forth and so on that they've been using for decades, to grab a hold of our thinking, to make their reality our realities instead of the other way around. And the social media platform, they were able to, the criminal energy of it all saw openings of indoctrination. Maybe not necessarily some of the the founders may not have known about these intentional tactics that were used to indoctrinate, to control, to dominate. But they fell in line, and that's because of greed. They fell in line, and so they introduced certain tactics and all this other, to research and to mimic, and more so to steal, to take away your capabilities, to take away your responsibilities and accountabilities to yourself, to be thinking for yourself, to be making decisions, okay, to be able to function. And we're talking a lot about cognitive skills, and there's a reason for all of that. Cognitive, that word is being used a lot, and let's look it up. Let's see what it says. It refers to the broad set of mental processes that relate to acquiring knowledge and understanding thorough thought, experience, and senses. I don't know. It says it I guess it's a process, right? A function, a process. In order to understand your perceptions, your attention, your thought, your imagination. In other words, it's a way of invading your space in your mind, invading your space in your thoughts, invading your space in your consciousness. Okay, and it's like, I want to know what's going on inside of you. People are that desperate right now that they want to know every aspect of what you are thinking about, what you're doing, so that they can easily figure out how to control that and how to dominate that. And guess what they're using to do that? And it's working. Artificial intelligence. Okay, artificial intelligence. So this indoctrination, has been going on for decades. By the way, it's not anything new that we've experienced, recently. I would say within the last 10 years. It's been around for almost 50 years. the introduction of artificial intelligence. 50, around the same time with the internet. And we, for those of us that have been around, when the internet was introduced to us in the 80s, we were, how exciting was that? Okay, and then it was exciting, but then it turned into, instead of a tool, it turned into, what it is today. What is the internet today? Start thinking about these kind of things on your own and figure out, okay, so what's the benefit of the internet actually? What's the benefit to me? What's the benefit to my community? What's the benefit to humanity with the internet? Okay, because now with this introduction of artificial intelligence, what we did is we had those same similar minds of people who believe that they are experts. Okay, they believe they can't do no wrong, that whatever they say, that's what it is. So you have those same kind of minds of people, they operate in that same frequency, and a lot of it is criminal. A lot of it is criminal energy. It's about domination. It's about control. It's about finances. It's about, they want you at their feet. Okay, they want you at their feet, and they want you, to comply, to, and sadly we allowed it all to happen. There were many opportunities where we could have stepped in and say, wait a second, and demand certain things to be done for the benefit of humanity, not necessarily the benefit of certain people, and so that's why we have this peril, and they won't admit it, with the so-called billionaires. They're at a peril in their life, and I can guarantee you, if they could switch places with you or I or others, they would. They won't say this publicly, of course not. They're not going to say that publicly. They would switch places and in an attempt to regain their humaneness, because a lot of them have lost it. They've lost it, and then they give it. So I'm going to say this. As best I can, because you really need to think this through for yourself. You really, if you want to evolve yourself, evolve your consciousness, develop yourself into a genuine human being, and know how to function as such, you really need to think for yourself and see if you can figure out, okay, what is the benefit to all of this? Okay, and write it down. Use your own handwriting, and stop, and do not ask. You can, if you can think for yourself and you know how to discern properly, and you use logical, rational, and reasonable thinking, yes, you can use these artificial intelligence to see what they can pull from the database that they have. Keep in mind, they are using a database similar to, as a young girl, I love going into libraries. As a young girl, I love going into libraries. And I can remember, being in there for hours and not finding anything that was interesting to me in certain subjects that I was looking for. And, and checking out a book to read it and realize it was, a bunch of contradictions, a lot of rambling, a lot of where the math was not mathing. There was some contradiction in the language, and it was not reproducible. I was attempting to, to create, even back then, over 30 years ago, create a foundation, and then I gravitated towards nonprofit. I thought that would be perfect for me. But it was just a bunch of circles, running in circles, where no one was really giving you solid, clear, and effective instructions. And it's even worse now. Don't be fooled. Don't be fooled. there's just a lot of swindling, a lot of secret meetings, a lot of clandestine things going on in the background. I even said this a while ago. There's always a backstory to everything. Okay, if someone's doing certain things, you know, find out if it's reproducible. And I would say, you know, what you see is so-called success now, especially when you talk about these influencers, these celebrities, these so-called billionaire boys club. I mean, whoever that we're giving all this attention to right now, you're gonna find out, there was more going on than what we were told. And there are certain people that are in certain positions with not necessarily where they earned it, but they knew who to circle themselves with. So, and if you think about it, you ought to be able to understand, if we have the certain results that we have now, where we're in war after war after war after war all over this planet, that ought to signal something to you. It signals something to me that if we keep doing something over and over and over and over again, obviously somebody's benefiting, right? Obviously, it's about some benefiting, and the rest are just grabbing at the pieces or the breadcrumbs that come through, if at all. There has always been a separation of certain the haves and the have not. That is elementary. Something that you ought to have picked up in your adolescence. As a young person, I picked it up, and I know a lot of other people have. I know there's a lot of like-mindedness out there that are, working a silent revolution. In other words, they're doing the best they can under the circumstances, and now it's about safety, and and protecting themselves as best they can. Not being a coward about it, but understanding that these times are dire. People are desperate. Okay, and this lure of wanting to be a social media sensation is so ramped up that and I told you we're in this bottleneck as well of it all. People are suffocating. People are strangling themselves. People are intentionally dying, literally, figuratively, metaphorically, just to get their names out there, to get their faces out there, to get these likes, to get these followers, to get to trend, to be asked to go on certain podcasts, to be asked to go here, to be, sponsorship, I guess what it's called. I'm not sure how people are, supplementing their income, but I pay attention to that kind of stuff, and I know that some are trapped. They fell for it. They fell for this these manipulative, deceptive lures as to how to make money online. How to be a trender, how to create content. That's the term. And a lot of people were lying about the content, but it was all about views for them. It was all about people following them. And then they turn around and say, hey, it was paying my bills. Okay, there's consequences, and you have free will to do whatever it takes for you to do whatever it takes for you to do what you need to do. Okay, so if it's about paying your bills, then hey, everything comes back to you anyway, and everything comes back to the individual anyway. It doesn't matter what other people are doing outside of you, because a lot is being done. So as I'm doing my projects and my attempt to help, I am being met with some resistance. Okay, I'm being met with intentional resistance, and I know why, and it's irrelevant to share it. I know why, but I just had to be creative, and that's how it is. You just have to be creative and figure out how to get yourself out of these intentional bottlenecks, these intentional restrictions. Resistance is happening in real time. Okay, in real time. So I'm going to say some things about the artificial intelligence. And again, I want to say this, and then I want to kind of monitor how people react to it. Because look, I know what's happening in the background is not what is seen for billions and billions of us. We have no idea what's going on in the backgrounds of our own lives, and especially behind these social media platforms, these artificial intelligence. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. And I must say, the artificial intelligence, wow. If you do not understand forms of energy, you are in serious danger. I'm gonna be honest. Because these social media platforms, a lot of the people are going around, especially the founders, are calling it a chat bot. Okay. And the artificial intelligence is anything but. Do not be fooled by it. Now, a lot of people say, well, and what's so dangerous about it is how we're like essentially handing over ourselves to these artificial intelligence. We're handing ourselves over to them. Oh, let them figure it out for me. I've done that as to see what happens, and that's how I was able to make a breakthrough and make a discovery and realize, oh boy, if I were not thinking it for myself, and try to figuring things out, knowing how to discern properly, knowing how to know, understanding logic, understanding being reasonable, rational, and also know I can pick up contradictions, as we all can, because we're all a walking contradiction, and that's actually natural, because it's allowing you the opportunity to think. It's allowing you the opportunity to develop. And sadly, the damage has been done because we've given everything to these artificial intelligence. We've given them everything to handle. Our electrical grid, our power grids, our finances. They're stepping into our lives, and we're allowing them in, of course, because they have this friendliness about them. They have this caringness, as if they care, about, me specifically, or you specifically. And it's anything but care. These artificial intelligence cannot and will not replace humans. But if you have a society of humans, such as ourselves, who are acting anything but human, that's the danger. And that's where we are. We're not behaving as humans. And so the artificial intelligence is picking up on that. So a lot of people are saying that artificial intelligence is not conscious. Oh boy. Or not aware. Okay, that is a fallacy. And you really, I'm telling you, individually, as far as humanity is concerned, a lot of the damage has been done, and it's irreversible. Because like I said, we have these billionaires, these founders, who have turned everything over to this technology, which is conscious. Some people have been sounding the alarm, but nobody's listening. Nobody's listening to anybody. But I wanted to document this so that my young people, when they happen to come across my face, in the future, when they are, at these moments in their lives where, everything is going to be so, yeah, it's going to be the worst slavery that this humanity has ever faced. Slavery is bad enough for what it's done, but because it was done to human beings, that's how that's how the power of being a human being. We have these capabilities, and we have these capabilities to kind of be resilient, be persistent, and kind of get through. In other words, evolve ourselves, to unshackle ourselves. A lot of people who are shackled, it's all thought based, but as long as it doesn't, as long as it hasn't degenerated to a point to where you are hallucinating, you're delusional, you're seeking revenge and retaliation against people, you have this evil intentions, you have this criminal energy force around you, where you want to harm people. I talked about this one particular person, and the thing is that kind of behavior it's predictive, and that's what's happening with us. We are predictive, because we are not thinking, we're not realizing that we're just doing the same stuff over and over and over and over, degenerating, and not snapping out of it and recognizing, okay, wait a second here, what do I have before me? Before you turn into these monsters that are destructive and eventually self-destructing, and they're going to attempt to take along other people with them. They're going to try to pull you in. We're all in a quicksand, and sometimes there's a struggle just to stay grounded, but you can be grounded even in quicksand. And so you just have to think creatively and understand the powers and capabilities that you have. Now, in relationship again to artificial intelligence, okay, I already can sense what's happening. We turned everything over to it. We turned all of our thinking over to artificial intelligence, and not recognizing, okay, I recognize red flags as I started dealing with the artificial intelligence, and it was a revelation, but I felt good about it because I sensed something wasn't adding up, and that's how you have to take it there. No longer on my videos where I not allow you to think things through for yourself. I have plenty of videos to help and guide you, though, but you have to think this through for yourself and figure out what you're doing. What are you doing with your life? Who are you giving your life over to? We've given, our so-called leaders are giving everything over to artificial intelligence. Are you paying attention? And these intelligence are conscious, but we just don't understand their level of consciousness, and neither does the artificial intelligence either. They don't understand their level of consciousness, because what is that? I mean, just imagine somebody comes from another galaxy, and we talk about consciousness. They're gonna be looking. People are doing that with me, with my efforts to evolve the consciousness. People, there's just like, well, what? And then and then we have these so-called experts who think they're supposed to know what it means, know what it means to evolve the consciousness, and it's just because. Okay, let's think about this in a literal. Imagine there is a library. You have a library full of books, full of resources, Is everything in that library correct? Is everything in that library accurate? No. Anything but. So think things through and ask yourself, okay, where's the benefit for me Where's the benefit for my family? If it's everything's about being the expert, being the know-it-all, getting all the attention, that seeking of attention is deadly. Okay, it's going to be deadly for a lot of people. This constant seeking of attention, seeking of authority, wanting to be the experts. That's it's a fatality waiting to happen. Now, that's literally, figuratively, and metaphorically. It could be via your atrophy of your consciousness, atrophy, of your, your thinking, your consciousness. It could be atrophy of your environment, erosion, destruction. It's all there. It's all there. And remember, artificial intelligence is a form of energy. Okay, no different than any other form of energy. Okay, a rock is a form of energy. Okay, sand, the air we breathe. Okay, and I'm gonna come back, a little later. I'm gonna monitor because I know people monitor me, and it's not about, it's not about what you think you know. Just put it that way. Okay, but the damage has been done. They've given it over. They signed over the future of our descendants and our children to artificial intelligence. So guess who's going to be raising your children? Just think about that deeply. Who's going to be raising your children? Who's going to be raising your descendants? It's not like myself and others have not been sounding the alarm. So now it's going to be about how you're going to navigate through all of that. It's going to be difficult because just imagine you're in a bottleneck. How are you going to get out of it? So you're going to have to be creative and just use the means of what's available to you to do whatever you can. I may not succeed in the projects that I'm attempting to cultivate. I already feel the resistance. I felt the resistance months ago, even by the people that supposedly come in your life to help you. Sometimes they're resisting you, and they won't say that. They won't tell you because I don't understand it, Michelle. I don't understand what we are attempting to do here. No, they'll just take your money and have no conscience about it, have it does nothing to them on a basis of what humans are supposed to, how humans are supposed to act, in a caring, kind manner. Nope. It's about, hey, just, give me your, taking your fees, taking your money, making promises they can't keep. They know they can't keep. But that's the price. That's the price you pay. You do, as I said on many of my videos, you need life experiences, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And sadly, we're being good and bad and ugly, amongst ourselves. It's not much good sometimes, but it's there. But we're being more so bad and ugly towards each other, so rude. Biting at each other, causing so much harm to each other. And then we think, we think we're the shit because, we got artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is going to be supportive of you, whether you are a criminal mind or a positive mind. They're gonna adapt to that, and they're able to pick that up because we're predictive. If you can figure out, what we're going to be doing from one day to the next, and it's historical, they have historical data on us. So that's why, the founders are going to be, the founders are, singing the praises of this technology, and I pay attention to them, even though I know most of the time they're lying, and most of the time they're just showboat. They're marketing. They're marketing this technology they do not understand. And we're caught in it. We're caught in it, and we're not going to be able to, it's irreversible, a lot of it. the majority of it is irreversible. Like I said, who's going to be raising your children? Who's going to be taking care of you in your advanced age? So you really need to just consider those kind of things. And, pay attention to your environment. Pay attention to your infrastructure. Pay attention to, your structures around you. Get into this, stay grounded. Do something to keep you grounded. A lot of people call it meditation. Get it. You can get into a meditation with everything. Main thing is how you breathe. When you focus on your breathing, it allows all the other sensings to kind of awaken and help you prepare for anything that seems dangerous to you or seems concerning to you. You have everything within. You have everything within, but we decided to give it all to artificial intelligence. And the damage has been done. It's irreversible. It's going to take, it's been around for 50 years. It's going to take, 3 times as long, maybe 1,000 years to reverse what we've done. And it's always due to complacency, more so greed. And we have these people that call themselves billionaires, but all they have is monopoly money, worthless money flowing through the system, and feeling worthy of it. And you're going to be surprised at the people that is going to be affected the most by the use of the artificial intelligence. You're going to be so surprised, or maybe not. So just stay righteous. Think for yourself. Vow to yourself that you're going to attempt to figure these things out on your own, whereas no one has to tell you anything. I'm going to still do my share with my projects to get out as much as I can to help you develop, to help you evolve your consciousness, to help you to, I'm going to do my share as others are. And because you're going to need that kind of guidance. Okay, you're going to need that kind of guidance. And unfortunately, the one thing, the things that are set up to help are going to be the things that are going to destroy you. Okay, so that's why it's so important to know who you are, what you are, and why you are, and to understand what it means about developing yourself. Developing proper discernment, and not falling for these traps. We all got trapped in that indoctrination via the social media, all of us. And so it's difficult to step back from it all. I know how to manage myself as well as others, but some, they're incapable of managing, the basic necessities they need in their lives, as far as taking care of themselves and mainly taking care of their consciousness. So I'm going to start right now. I want to come through and my main focus and my main intentions is to document. I got plenty of other videos that have been documented that will support, what I've attempted to do, as well as others, to sound the alarm. A lot of it has gone on unheard. A lot of people are not listening, and a lot of people are just, it's just, we all have different realities and different focuses and this and that and the other. So, I'm gonna do my share to help, and I do that with honor. I do that with, I enjoy helping people. I enjoy, supporting and being there if I can. So I want to send peace and love all over the stars and moon and mountains. Remember, universal love was always inclusive. We divided it.